Did you know there were only 9 30-point comebacks in NBA history? We're going to break down every comeback, starting with the Clippers. The Clippers were supposed to be championship contenders, but injuries had destroyed their season. No Kawhi Leonard, no Paul George. They were basically a sub-500 team watching their title window slam shut. This was supposed to be their year, and instead, they were fighting just to make the playoffs. And if things couldn't get any worse, they found themselves down 35 points with 120 to go in the half against the Wizards. Fortunately, Luke Kennard kept his team on life support and would go full-out Reggie Miller mode later in the game. But the Clippers still trailed by 7 points with only 20 seconds left. Let me put it this way. No team has ever won a game when trailing by 7 or more points with only 20 seconds left. Not once. We're talking about over 16,000 games. It's literally never happened. But what happened in the next 20 seconds might be the most clutch sequence ever. Coffee goes in and drives in for a dunk. And on the other end, Kuzma goes to the free throw line for the Wizards and only makes 1. But see, the Clippers are still down 6 with 15 seconds left. Now Kennard shot a quick 3 and the Clippers have to foul. But then the Wizards make not 1, but 2 of the dumbest plays you'll ever see. First, Kuzma gets called for a 5-second violation on the inbound pass. A 5-second violation with the game on the line, which created a turnover. Now all the Wizards have to do is make sure they don't foul. In worst case scenario, the game is still tied.
Gotta watch out, 3 seconds, puts up the shot, hits it, and the foul! Are you kidding me?
No Kawhi, no Paul George, no problem. Luke Kennard sinks the free throw and wins the game. Now here's the crazy part. This wasn't even the Clippers' most impressive comeback. We'll get to that later. But the Clippers weren't the only team that pulled off a comeback without their star player. The Atlanta Hawks were in full desperation mode. They were sitting in 10th place, barely hanging on to a play-in tournament spot. To make things worse, Trae Young was injured and couldn't play. Their opponent? The Boston Celtics, who had been absolutely dominant, winning 20 of their last 22 games. They were locked into the #1 seed and looking forward to starting the playoffs. For the Hawks, this felt like trying to climb Mount Everest without having any oxygen. And for the first half, it looked exactly like you'd expect. The Celtics were shooting lights out, knowing deep down the Hawks couldn't mess with them. With only 4 minutes left in the half, the Hawks trailed 38-68, a 30-point deficit against the best team in the Eastern Conference, without your best player. But something clicked for the Hawks in those final 4 minutes of the half. They went on a 9-0 run, cutting it to 21 at halftime. It wasn't much, but what happened next was basketball at its purest. For the first time in any of these comeback games, all 5 starters on the Hawks scored in double figures, led by DeJounte Murray and Bogdanovic.
Goes in, his shot is short, gets his rebound, comes out to Matthews, 3-ball is good!
But the Celtics knew the critics were getting ready to come after them. They fought back, and with under a minute left, this was still anyone's game. That is until DeAndre Hunter stepped up and made one of the gutsiest plays you'll ever see.
Hunter for 3!
That's a dagger. That's the dagger.
With still 11 seconds left on the clock, Hunter went for the gamble and buried the dagger, up 4 points. Celtics be choking some major leads, but they've been on the other side of this before. But more on that later. It took an entire team effort for the Hawks to come back. But what if I told you comebacks aren't just about perfect team basketball? Sometimes one player just decides to take over the entire game and put his team on his back. Fresh off winning a ring in the 6, Kawhi Leonard had bolted to LA in free agency. Everyone was writing them off as one-year wonders, saying they'd gotten lucky and would never be relevant again. But Kyle Lowry had other plans. He was determined to prove that the Raptors were more than just Kawhi Leonard plus role players. Coming into this game, they were 21-8, one of the best records in the league. Their opponent was a Dallas Mavericks team that was supposed to be easy prey. Luka Doncic was injured and ruled out for the game. This should have been a routine win for the defending champs. Instead, it turned into one of the most embarrassing performances in recent Raptors history. With 2:12 left in the third, the Raptors were down 55-85, a 30-point deficit at home, against a team missing their best player. But what happened in the fourth was one of the most dominant individual performances you'll ever see. In the fourth quarter alone, Kyle Lowry scored 20 points. The entire Mavs team in the fourth scored only 21 points. Put it this way, a 33-year-old point guard nearly outscored an entire NBA team in 12 minutes of basketball.
Lowry transitions. Oh, good bucket and book it.
The time Porzingis left the game to come back in. I mean, this is a different game in terms of speed right now and energy. Time!
And on top of the win, Lowry did this without Norman Powell, Marc Gasol, and Pascal Siakam. He literally carried 4 role players to one of the most improbable comebacks in NBA history. Unfortunately for Dallas, this wasn't their first time choking away a massive lead. They'd done it before with their star players, but we'll get to that story later. What makes this comeback special is that it was the NBA's first 30-point comeback in over a decade. The last time a 30-point comeback happened before this was in 2009, in a game that featured 2 rising stars. On paper, this looked like just another game between 2 struggling franchises, Kings vs Bulls. But what nobody realized was that they were about to witness a battle between the future Rookie of the Year and the future MVP of the league. You had 20-year-old Derrick Rose, who had already won Rookie of the Year. He would be the youngest MVP in the league just 2 years later. Then you had 19-year-old Tyreke Evans. He was putting up numbers that nobody had seen since Magic Johnson and Oscar Robertson. He was on pace to become just the 4th player in NBA history to average 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists as a rookie. This was the future of the NBA going head to head, and for the first 2.5 quarters, Derrick Rose and the Bulls were putting on a clinic. With 8:50 left in the third, the Kings were trailing 44-79. For most rookies, it would have been a learning experience. But Evans wasn't most rookies. He showed everyone why he belonged in the Rookie of the Year conversation.
6 to shoot. Evans trying to hide. 3 to shoot. 2. Evans, a rainbow. That's good. Oh, my goodness.
But Evans didn't do it alone. He actually got some help from Ime Udoka, who came off the bench and was the second leading scorer. The same Ime Udoka who would go on to coach the Celtics to the NBA Finals 13 years later. The Kings went absolutely nuclear in the second half, shooting 50% from the field. Meanwhile, the Bulls completely collapsed, going just 2 for 10 from beyond the arc. Ending it off with free throws, the Kings pulled off a 35-point comeback, the second largest comeback in NBA history. But let's face it, they were hungry. They came into that game 12-14 desperate for a win. And speaking of teams who were desperate, the LA Lakers seemed more desperate than ever, even after coming off a 3-peat. See, the LA Lakers started off 8-12 and looked nothing like champions. Meanwhile, the Mavs started off 17-1, coming for the throne. One of the most explosive offenses in the league, led by Dirk and Steve Nash. With 11:13 left in the third, the Lakers found themselves down 36-66. The Mavs were destroying prime Kobe and Shaq. The Lakers just looked old and tired. But one thing you couldn't take away from the Lakers was that they were the defending champs. Although Dirk and Nash were doing their thing, the comeback started with someone off the bench, Nick Van Exel. He scored 25 points off the bench. And if a bench player is going at you, best believe the Lakers weren't going to let that slide. Shaq would get back in the post, dominating with 26-11. But Kobe would score 21 of his 27 points in the fourth quarter alone. And after Steve Nash turned the ball over, you knew who was going to take the last shot.
Bryant's had an unbelievable quarter. He spins, he shoots. Lakers lead. Timeout Mavs.
The Lakers didn't just pull off a stunning comeback. This was a reminder that the dynasty being dead was exaggerated. The Lakers would make the second round of the playoffs, eventually losing to the Spurs. But what made this comeback special is the inspiration it carried over, from one legend to another, idol to fan, nearly 20 years later. Sometimes all it takes is one game to spark a player's entire career. one that would eventually lead to an NBA Finals and championship. The Celtics were having a frustrating season, sitting at only 3 games above 500, fighting for a better seed. This was supposed to be the year they took the next step towards a championship, but injuries and inconsistency derailed their plans. Jason Tatum was having a solid year, but critics were wondering if he really had that Mamba mentality in him. The Spurs came in with nothing to lose. They were 33-37, already eliminated from playoff contention. For the first half, it looked like the Spurs were going to play spoiler. They put on a clinic, shooting 71% from the field. With just 3 minutes left in the half, the Celtics found themselves down 45-77, a 32-point deficit at home against a team already eliminated from the playoffs. It wasn't looking good for anyone on the team, besides Tatum, who scored Boston's 14 of 16 points in the first quarter. The only issue was the rest of his team didn't show up. But what happened next wasn't just another ordinary comeback. You would see one of the greatest scoring performances in NBA history.
To the corner, Tatum takes it to the basket. Tatum for the lead.
Tatum finished the game with 60 points, and going into overtime, Jaylen Brown would seal the deal. Tatum not only scored a career high, but he also tied Larry Bird for the Celtics franchise scoring record at just 23 years old. This game would give Tatum and the team confidence to make a run to the NBA Finals that very next year. But so far, every comeback we've talked about happened during the regular season, where, let's face it, the intensity isn't as high as it is in the playoffs. But there was one comeback that no one saw coming, one that shocked the NBA world.
Get a lot more questions when you win, boy.
The Golden State Warriors won 3 championships in 4 years, completely dominating the league. Now the Avenger squad was making a run for a three-peat. But when you realized the Clippers would face the Warriors in the first round, it just seemed so unfair. Remember, this wasn't the Lob City Clippers anymore. The team was blown up and sold for parts, now led by Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell. You might as well have written the series off as a sweep. That is until Game 2 happened. The Warriors already took Game 1, and it looked like the same thing was going to happen again. With 7:31 left in the third, the Clippers found themselves down 63-94. You just felt bad for the Clippers, who were out there, who you'd think just would have no shot. But this game wasn't a game to feel sorry for the Clippers. This was David versus Goliath. Starting with Lou Will, who was just warming up, he would score 29 of his 36 points during comeback time. And one thing you don't mess with is Lou Will's jumper.
It's about the habits that you set, and right now with the turnovers, he's not happy with the Warriors play. It's Lou Williams.
But then you realize the Warriors still have Steph Curry. And after this shot went in, it looked like a comeback would be teased, but never achieved in this game. The Warriors still had a 99.9% chance of winning this game. And even after the Clippers came back, ESPN still gave the Warriors a better shot to win the game with 30 seconds left. Not one time did the Clippers have an actual shot to win the game, until there was 16.5 seconds.
An open shot. Shamet able to knock it down. First lead for the Clippers.
Landry Shamet, a second-year player who most casual fans never even heard of, sealed the game. This wasn't just a regular comeback. This was a reminder that no lead was safe, no matter how much talent you have on your team, especially in the playoffs. The Clippers would steal another game, but eventually losing 2-4 in the series. The comeback felt so good to watch, especially if you wanted to see the dynasty humbled. But Warriors fans shouldn't feel too bad, because the very first 30-point comeback game in NBA history went in their favor. Now this game is so old, there wasn't even any footage I could find for this. In fact, this game is so old, the 3-point line wasn't even added in the league. And yet the Warriors managed to come back, down 31 points without the 3? See, the Milwaukee Bucks were the defending champs, but this time they didn't have Kareem, who was traded to the Lakers. Meanwhile, the Warriors were a scrappy West Coast team led by Rick Barry, Phil Smith, and Gus Williams. But the Bucks jumped out to a 31-point lead, And in 1975, a 31-point lead might as well have been a 50-point lead. But what happened next would be etched in history forever. The Warriors scored 30-plus points for the next 3 quarters, while holding the Bucks to only 14 points in the fourth. This was the mother of all comebacks, which started on November 28, 1975. Because exactly 21 years later, on that same date, another team would achieve the largest comeback in NBA history. The Utah Jazz was a legitimate championship contender led by Karl Malone and John Stockton. See, this wasn't just any ordinary team. This would be the same team that would face Michael Jordan's Bulls in the finals that very season. While the Jazz started off 10-2, the Nuggets were already starting another losing season at 5-12. The team led by Dale Ellis, Mark Jackson, and Brian Stiff could not match up against the Jazz, but midway through the second quarter, the Nuggets were up by 36 points. And this game happened before the league started chucking threes. But what if I told you it wouldn't be Stockton that would be the Robin of Karl Malone? Jeff Hornacek scored 29 and 7 for the game, while Karl Malone scored 21 of his 31 in comeback time. The Jazz would go on a 71-33 run, achieving what no other NBA team to this day has ever achieved. 28 years later, with more scoring, more threes, and more fouls, and yet no team has managed to come back from more than 36 points down. So there you go, that makes 9 total 30-point comebacks, 6 of them which happened in the last 5 years. Only one in the playoffs so far, but the record for largest comeback still stays strong nearly 30 years later.